Happy Friday, June 26th. Still don't know the date. That's not an effect of being laid off. I just never know the date. It's kind of one of the best things about me. I remember back in the day when I was working in restaurant life. Um, I'd be trying to like figure out my schedule for the following week, and I'd say, "What day is it?" And they would say the 27th. I meant, no, what day? I have no idea where we're at because I was 23 years old and I was just, partying all the time. They were like, must be nice. And I'm like, it's the life I live. What's up, everybody? Joining all the chats. How's everyone doing on this fine? No, I think your thing just turned on late, Alex. I was on time. This is a you problem. If only you knew. If, if only you knew what the lead up to this show was like. And unfortunately, I can't tell you guys about it yet, but let's just say there's some really good things happening in the world of Outside the Box and Ben Cominos. Um, and I can't tell you just yet. Morning, Elf. Um, but oh man, do I have some news. I can't wait to tell you. The unfortunate side of that news means I probably am going to slow down the construction of my studio just by a couple days. But it's probably still going to be the blinds for a couple more days next week, which I know the TikTok chat is not going to be thrilled about. But because they've been giving me shit for a month and a half. But for the rest of you guys, we probably are going to push back the construction of the studio by a couple of days, maybe still have it done by the end of the week. I am still hoping to get my new souped up laptop so that I can mesh all of the audiences together that are watching the show so that you're all in one big chat. Um, and you guys can all kind of get to know one another and see what everybody's saying. But yeah, just I wish I could tell you guys more, but I just can't say anything else about it right now. Let's just say you can't keep a good guy down for long, as Chucky once said. So, thank you all for your continued support as we continue along whatever the hell this new journey is for me. And thanks for all the kind words. Shout out to Nate. I don't know if he's in the chat yet. Nate is a friend of mine that I made through TikTok who made the new banner on my Facebook page for Outside the Box. I told him save the template because he used a picture of me in like a loose fitting blue t-shirt and I don't look my best right now. So I mean, I was like, save the template. I'm gonna go get an actual headshot taken and we'll replace it there. But shout out to Nate for putting together some awesome signage for my social media accounts. He did a fantastic job with what's going on. Good morning, good morning. As more people are rolling in here, Alex is saying super chat is going to be great. You guys have no idea. I'm telling you, um, you're it's going to help the community grow so much faster because the people I met through TikTok who I've been building a relationship with for the last 2 or 3 months are all fantastic people. We actually have our own group chat going in another app called Discord that any of you that want to join are more than welcome to join, the regular listeners. um, and then all you guys on YouTube, Jar Manny, Justin, who have been listening through more traditional ways, are all going to get along so well. And then, of course, Alex, you and Mikey and the rest of the new people are fitting in so well. It's absolutely awesome. Schwollen Pekka is asking, is it a socialist community? Well, I mean, there are a lot of people doing cost-free labor for me right now, so sorta. Probably closer to communism, like a type of mutual aid that I would be happy to repay in turn because that's how a society is supposed to work. But something tells me you don't have a lot of friends, and that's why you don't understand that concept. But it's all right, bud. You found friends here. No reason to be so short about it. Um, but that's just me. Carla, you can't cancel me. It's impossible to cancel me. Trust me. Stations have tried. It is impossible to keep me down. It doesn't matter what you do. Fuck. But anyway, we've got a lot to continue. Carla. We have a lot to jump into today in the world of politics. And I figured we should start with what the title of the episode is all about. There are other things that I want to get into that I think are going to be more fun to talk about. What's up, old lib? Um, that I think are going to be more interesting to talk about. One of the topics is going to tie into what we were mentioning yesterday with kind of the changing of the guard within the Democratic Party, um, highlighting that maybe establishment endorsements at this stage of the game are almost more of an anchor than no endorsement at all, and that being anti establishment is kind of the way to make it in this game right now, which is kind of interesting. One major Dem that you would not suspect saying that she is expecting um, new leadership in the Democratic Party. And when I tell you who that Dem is, you're going to be like, oh, so this is real, huh? Also, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Venezuela, something I haven't been able to talk about all week. I don't do a lot of disaster talk because outside of saying, um, donate if you can. There's really not so much you can say, but the people of Venezuela really are struggling right now. There's a new school that is looking for public dollars in Northeast Wisconsin in order to promote hate and bigotry. Pretty sure we got to go tell those Mother Hubbards no. And then, of course, we have some election fraud that I absolutely cannot wait to tell all of you about right now. Because, I'm just asking questions, you know? Isn't that how it works? Isn't that the MAGA line? I'm just asking questions about election fraud. That's always the line. They're not accusing anybody of election fraud, but they are very nervous about the fact that our elections might be stolen, that we are rigging our elections in the name of the left and all of their authoritarian agenda as we watch a masked Virgin Army just completely annihilate Americans in the street. Well, fun fact. Turns out I was wrong in mocking everybody, and I'm going to have to issue a public apology. It turns out that there was election fraud, and that I am a fool for acting otherwise. It's because I kept my blinders on. It's because I'm partisan. It's because I'm not looking for the real truth. I had my blinders on, and the election was stolen. Sometimes you just have to eat crow. We found out in Utah that a GOP firm paid $4.3 million to a company to falsify documents for dead people so that they would be able to vote for GOP candidates so that they could gerrymander the state. I know. MAGA's probably up in arms right now. MAGA, where are you at? Hold on, I'm going to leave a link. Whoops. Still gonna have to get used to that. I'm gonna leave a link in the chat for all the MAGAs in the audience that perpetually have their sleuthing hats on, asking questions and looking for the voter fraud. We found it. A $4.3 million effort to allow dead people to be able to vote in the Utah elections so that the GOP could gerrymander their state because it turns out blowing up the economy, starting a fake war that nobody asked for, creating a Gestapo and allowing them to run amok in the streets, and engaging in flagrant corruption basically every single day is not a particularly popular platform. So instead of trying to just win elections on your merits because you don't have any, maybe you should go and check this stuff out because I have found you your election fraud. So now that we have found it, you got one of two options. I'd be happy to know which one you'd rather take. We can either A, create a year-long controversy about this voter fraud, or B, we can acknowledge that voter fraud happened, that they were immediately caught before the vote happened, and that anybody trying to do voter fraud typically gets caught before they're allowed to engage in it. Waka waka, MAGA, which one would you like to go with? Because it seems like either way, you're going to need to get to shutting the fuck up about 2020 now, huh? You're probably going to need to be getting to shutting the fuck up about the California primary last month, right? Because I have found you brazen election fraud, and I'm seeing Jay and Violet and Ali all say in my TikTok chat right now, this is the first time they're hearing about it. I ask you all, what's up, Ginger? Thanks for being here. I ask you all, what, how many of you have heard this? How many of you guys have heard that this happened? And this isn't a conspiracy. This isn't like we think this happened. They have just been called out about it. Look it up. In Utah, $4.3 million dead people voting in order to further an effort for gerrymandering because in the fucking right-wing Mormon state of Utah, Republicans are nervous about being able to have enough of a majority to enact their gerrymandering agenda. It's almost like their platform sucks. Not, I almost said the phone number. I'm taking any calls on the matter. I put the link in the chat. Obviously on YouTube or on TikTok, you guys just have to request to ask. Yes, Carla, your dead dad can vote for Francesca Hong now because obviously MAGA does not panic about that as being voter fraud. This is what I'm talking about. And mark my words, when they get obliterated in November, they are going to be bitching about voter fraud. Donald Trump, we talked about it yesterday. Donald Trump killed a housing bill that really wasn't going to make much of a difference, but a housing bill that would have been popular politics to anybody who only follows the news for 10 minutes a day. He killed that bill in the name of making sure that the Save America Act was able to get passed first, and it's not going to get passed. Of course it's not going to get passed. It needs 60 votes, and it's a horseshit bill. So he's going to turn around in November and cry about election fraud. That is the inevitable outcome that is going to happen as a result of this election. Meanwhile, and I want everybody to remember this segment now so that when you see that, go bookmark episodes. What's up, Ecuador? Thanks for checking in. Bookmark this episode now. Go find articles about it. Have it in the hopper for you to be able to comment on. Because when they inevitably cry election fraud, and it is coming, and it'll be all over AM radio, because if you say anything otherwise, you probably won't be employed there for very long. It will be all over AM radio. So go get your ducks in a row now and just tell them to get to shutting the fuck up when it comes time. Brian, what's up, dude? Says, how about Elon backdoor voting machines in swing states? That one I've never adhered to. That feels like the blue MAGA version of voter fraud. I feel like that's people struggling with the fact. I mean, Brian, I don't even need to tell you this. You didn't vote for Kamala Harris, and I'm not outing you. You didn't vote for Kamala Harris because she sucked. Um, uh, a lot of people didn't vote for Kamala Harris because they didn't think she was good. There was no election fraud, in my opinion, in 2024. They didn't need to do election fraud. They ran a lackluster candidate that obviously lost in swing states because she couldn't condemn our allies in the Middle East. She was marching Liz Cheney around. You know the drill. You know all the stuff. Ecuador saying he voted for Wario. He probably would have been a better president than either of the candidates, and his entire personality is based on greed, and he still would be better than either of the candidates in 2024. Like, there have been people, Brian, that have offered experts to me that would be willing to talk about Elon Musk and Starlink and his efforts to do this stuff. I'm not buying it for a second. I'm not buying it for a single second that anything like that took place, personally. But and I know you probably aren't either, but I figured it would at least be worth mentioning. Brambo saying, we found election fraud. The GOP, who controls executive, House, Senate, and SCOTUS, has to deal with election fraud. Exactly. Exactly. They're always the perpetual victims. Honestly, right wing politics makes more sense when they're not in power, right? Because their whole thing is grievance politics. So Republicans' thing is bitching about a system, but really not having any intention of actually trying to fix it in any way. So when they're in power and they're like, the cost of living, that's all we have to keep voting for Republicans, even though they're all busy not fixing these problems. It only makes sense when they're not in power, which is kind of interesting. So check it out. Utah, $4.3 million to a firm to falsify the records of dead people to go and vote. This is corroborated. This is not conspiracy. This is not what MAGA did in 2020. This happened. Brian says the DNC did not give us a choice. Isabel said, I'm so mad at the DNC. And Brian says, waka, 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 that though. Exactly. Bacchus Boulder says that's true of both parties. It's easier to yell from the sidelines. Well, yes, okay, Bacchus, that's fair. Because Bidenomics was working was the rallying cry for a lot of the people in Congress at that point. The difference being the Democratic Party has to deal with leftists, right? People like myself, when Joe Biden was in office, and there's a record of it, at least I think there is. I don't know if they deleted my show page or not. Um, there's a record of it of me as early as September of 2022 saying if the Democratic message come 2024 is that this economy is rocking and rolling, and if you don't recognize that, you just don't understand economics. I said that's going to be a bad message. The Republican Party really doesn't have to deal with that. The Republican Party knows that as long as their orange dad president makes his way into office, that's all that matters. And then whatever happens after that, 45% of MAGA or 45% of the American population, and of course they're all MAGA because anybody who isn't part of the cult doesn't believe it, thinks Donald Trump is coming through on his politics. Everything's more expensive. He started a war. He's doing anything that our allies in the Middle East ask for. He has done not a single thing other than make life difficult for transgender people and Mexicans to actually follow through. And then MAGA gets mad when people say their entire identity is based in hate. And it's like, well, you're going to have to give us a reason not to believe that then. Because it seems to me as though you kind of struggle doing anything else other than bitch about different minority populations. Sharon says, if it can happen in Utah, what other states has this occurred if we that we aren't aware of? Well, that's just it, Sharon. Because Utah, I think a lot of liberals wouldn't even look at that. It wouldn't even cross my mind that Utah would be on the menu, right? Like, how many of you guys are even listening to this segment right now thinking, Ben, but why would Republicans need to do that in Utah? It's fucking Utah. They obviously don't need to worry about losing to Democrats there. Well, it's an unfortunate reality that they do. And by unfortunate, I mean for them. But it's an unfortunate reality that even in Utah, they're like, son of a bitch, if we don't figure out a way to get dead people on the roster, then we're not going to be able to win some of these elections. It is a proven fact. I see Sheriffs says pass the SAVE Act. Unfortunately, Sheriffs, that's not going to do anything to stop these people, apparently, because, I mean, Utah already has voter ID laws, right, sheriffs? Why don't you chime in on the show and go toe to toe? I can tell you're trying to troll me, but always remember I am a first generation gamer and I got up earlier than you did. So you're probably going to struggle going head to head with me. But here's a link right there. Go ahead and join the program. I'd be happy to bring you on if you want to talk about the merits of the SAVE Act. I'd love to have you. Alex says Utah's PR has never recovered from the Great Soaking. I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that. Look up Utah and soaking from 2024. Alex is a funny individual. Um, but yeah, tell me about it. Wait, what are we saying over here? At this point, it's flat out patriotic to hate Trump and his policies. I agree. I agree. And again, no one can say I didn't. I gave the son of a bitch the benefit of the doubt. I didn't trust him, but I was like, you know what? All the all the economic experts of the day are telling you that the Fed needs to raise interest rates and the tariff will never work. I've been a firm believer that raising interest rates in this era of inflation will do nothing to bring inflation down because the bulk of the costs behind our inflated goods is corporate greed. So I've always said that raising inflation rates isn't going to work to address those kind of things, and it's the same principle here. Um, Graham Plattner fan club saying the church owns half of Utah and the corruption in government tied to church is unreal. Oh no, absolutely. What's the saying? Don't trust any church that tells you how to vote and any politician that tells you how to be religious. That makes sense. Like that's real. Just a Wisco girl says there are no merits to the SAVE Act. Not a single one. But so anyway, all the economic experts were telling you that we had to raise interest rates in order to address inflation, and I was like, well, that's a crock of horseshit. And I had several economists back that up. I actually had a college friend of mine who's married to an economics professor reach out to me. I actually might be bringing him on next week to talk about exactly this. But so conversely, when all the economic experts were telling us that Trump's tariff plan might, 95% of them were like, this is stupid. And I was like, well, yeah, probably there's historic precedent to show you that tariffs are a stupid idea, but they also are the same people that are telling you that the Fed has to raise interest rates in the name of bringing inflation down when it was pretty evident that inflation was happening not as a result, well, I shouldn't say not as a result, but for much less of a degree as a result of the traditional factors that impact inflation and much more that the handful of companies that control our economy essentially saw an opening between the COVID epidemic and the war in Ukraine to jack the prices through the roof, and we've seen cost of living going up everywhere. And the Republican Party was more than happy to blame Joe Biden for that now, and now they're running to provide cover for their orange dad president at every possible turn because they can't acknowledge that they're just as much of a cult as Blue MAGA, to be perfectly frank, even more so. For those of you that weren't listening to this show when Joe Biden was in office, I said I used to think MAGA was the worst cult until I met Blue MAGA, and now I realize I just can't stand whichever cult is in power at that time. Now that Donald Trump is back in office, I can say that regular MAGA is much more insufferable than Blue MAGA, because Blue MAGA will say dumb shit, but they won't get loud and cry about it. And I respect that. Blue MAGAs, for all their quirks and all their idiosyncrasies, and the fact that I think they're a bit lost sometimes, it's not the same. Like, this is just a complete and abject refusal to acknowledge what's going on. Huh. But you know what's funny is, you guys want to hear about censorship right now? I just was removed from TikTok Live for talking about election integrity. Wow, can I'm going to appeal this. Hold on one second here. Hold on one second. This is crazy. They just freaking muted me because I was talking about actually proven election fraud. Look at this. I don't know if you guys can read that right there, but they just removed me off of TikTok because I was talking about election integrity in a proven case of what happened. I have to take a quick training in order to make sure. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be off the TikTok account for the remainder of the show on Friday, but that's okay because I have to answer 5 questions in order to do this here. So, anybody, Sterline, if you can hop on the Discord chat and let everyone know what's going on. And Rusty, you're not wrong, and I appreciate the comments about my courage. It's all right. I'm happy to do this with you. Everybody can just funnel into the YouTube chat here today. That's completely fine. Um, yeah. Alex says, Citizen, that sounded awfully seditious. Time for your state-sponsored re-education. I'll read this to you right now. So I have to take a mandatory policy training in order to reenact my account. How it works, you'll be given 5 questions. Use the reference information to decide if each scenario is a violation. You have 2 chances to answer your questions. Correctly. If you answer any questions incorrectly, the training will restart. Your live access will be restored upon completing all questions correctly. If you don't complete the training with all questions answered correctly, you'll need to appeal to have your live access restored. Training is only provided the first time you violate a specific reason. It won't be available for you for future violations of the same reason. Hey, people that are here, Gamer Jordan, can you please reach out to Grand Platinum Fan Club and ask her if it'd be more important for me to should I do the training or should I appeal it? Because I obviously wasn't furthering. If you listen to it, I wasn't spreading any rumors at all. I was actually reporting the news. So would it be better? Allie, would it be better for me to take? Yeah, okay, good. What's the better option here? Should I take the training or should I appeal? Because I stand by everything I said and it's been proven. Okay, perfect. I'm appealing right now. Um, yeah, okay. I'm gonna wait for a second to do both. Okay, so appeal. But when I say that, it says I can either learn more or continue to appeal. I'm just going to continue to appeal. My live does not. My options are the notice is unclear. I'm still not sure why I got this restriction. My live does not contain the content mentioned in the notice. TikTok should allow content like mine. I understand the decision, but the restriction is too strict. I feel like the option is the second one. My live does not contain the content mentioned in this notice. Does that sound right to everybody? Brian says, so then tell me how Elon is not influencing elections. Yeah, exactly. The live does not contain. Good. Check. I'm going to type a quick description here. Um, I'm typing the cases I referenced have been reported by multiple official news sources. By multiple mainstream sources. Does that sound good? Yeah, Nataki, they kicked me off TikTok because I was talking about confirmed cases of voter fraud in Utah. $4.3 million. All right, appeal submitted. I'll let you guys know if anything changes while we're still live doing this show. But it turns out that even when you're independent, you're not quite as independent as you think. Um, and it still offers me the opportunity for policy training as well, but I think I'm going to wait on that until then. And as Canary says, it is a fuck it Friday. By the way, it's been fuck it Friday for a while now on my show. I haven't been able to say that on Outside the Box, but from 10 to 11, you can kind of tell I get a little punch drunk because I do 2 hours of content in the morning, an hour to an hour and a half of content at night. And by Friday, in my second hour, I'm just like going off on nonsense. So we have hit fuck it Friday at this point. And yeah, Rusty, I saw the 30-year and 100-year jail sentences for protesters. I'm telling you, man, it's getting real out there while the media's talking about reflecting pools and paint chipping. People are getting here's a true story. So I took German in high school. I took it for all 5 years. The fifth year I was an AP German. If I had been born to a wealthier family, I probably would have taken a trip to Germany this summer between my junior and sophomore year with the German club, or my junior and senior year. My 11th grade, I read an entire book in German called Die Weiße Rose, which translated in English is The White Rose. And for those of you unfamiliar with it, The White Rose was an underground newspaper that was written spreading the truth about what Nazi Germany was doing at the time. Like they were an underground newspaper in the thick of Nazi Germany. I know a lot of people I myself compare ICE to the Gestapo, but people will be like, well, Ben, it's not apples to apples. I'm like, okay, maybe not literally, but I'm pretty effing close. Um, and so to that, and obviously the story ends very sadly for a lot of the people involved with it, because they eventually get caught throughout the time there, and it's an incredibly fascinating story and kind of opens your eyes to what's happening in Minnesota. What Rusty is referencing is 30-year prison sentences handed out to individuals who were passing out what the kids referred to as zines, aka magazines. Um, Essentially talking about what the Trump administration is doing. Actually, now that I don't have to use my phone for TikTok for the remainder of the show here, let me see if I have quick access to it here and I can read directly from it because I actually saw something as recently as this morning. Um, yeah, American was just sentenced to 30 years in federal prison for moving Antifa zines. And yet there have been zero questions about NSPM 7 at the Homeland Security hearing at Capitol Hill today. You clearly do not hate Congress enough. To which somebody jokingly replied, they're busy, dude. And it's a picture of Kirsten Gillibrand and Ted Cruz wearing Knicks jerseys and taking pictures of the food they were eating, while Americans earlier today are being sentenced to 30 years in jail for passing out Antifa magazines. And meanwhile, MSNBC, you know, the leftist network, hasn't had a goddamn thing to say about what's going on there. And something tells me you all are probably hearing about that for your first time, too. That's being reported by Ken Klippenstein. He is a fantastic independent journalist that everybody should be giving a follow on their social media accounts if they haven't already. He's one of the loudest voices on NSPM 7. Anytime I do content about that on my show, I typically am referencing some of the work that he does in conjunction with a handful of other lesser known journalists as well. But this is stuff that's really happening. And you guys just watched it happen to me on TikTok real time. This is real. Cancel culture is out there. It just so happens that the loudest voices about it are mad that they can't throw stones at trans people, and that's how they feel like they're being canceled. What you're watching happen in real time is what actual cancel culture looks like. You have a president who isn't following through on any of his campaign promises, a country that is slowly falling into his dystopian fascism with flock cameras, data centers, and detention centers popping up all over this country, and yet the people highlighting that are the people that are the ones being trying to be portrayed as a villain. Kind of wild when you think about it. I have fallen behind. I'm gonna go on these. Kayla Grady says, "Mom Donnie just enacted 2-year rent freeze. Fuck yeah, I feel so bad for the landlords. Meanwhile, I'm on a 6-year rent freeze. You know what? I don't expect you guys to all pat me on the back. I'll do it myself. I haven't even considered all week raising my rent. I lost my fucking job on Monday. I haven't raised my rent in 6 years. I'm pretty sure I could have just called them up and been like, you guys are going to see a rent increase in the next 2 months, and there's nothing I can do about it. Vote for Aragon is saying, is the policy training that you can't say election fraud? I feel like because they have AI monitoring you 24/7, as does YouTube, as does Facebook. And I'm anti AI, but I mean, like I said, it's so ubiquitous, you're going to have to deal with it. It's a matter of how you learn to deal with it. Um, but yes, it like the AI is scraping me talking about election fraud, but what it's actually cracking down on is the MAGA morons. Like that's how it's phrased. The people, I think 2020 was rigged. Like those are the people that do it. And I am going to have to work around saying election fraud. Clearly, I actually was doing a nighttime live last night, and I don't want to risk running afoul of the YouTube censors here, so and Facebook censors here. So I'm just going to say the epidemic that's been taking lives of Americans for the last 20 years that could be prescribed by doctors. I think we all can agree on what we're saying there. Instead of saying the F word, you have to say fennel seeds. Instead of saying guns, you have to say pew pews. Instead of saying Israel, you have to say our allies in the Middle East. That's why I can say this now because YouTube and Facebook is a little less strict on it. So when you hear me talking like a moron doing my show, it's not because that's how I want to talk. It's because that's how the algorithm forces you to talk. And if you don't do it, um, they literally just take you off the air. So I'm gonna have to figure out a workaround for the examples when there actually are examples of election fraud, or when I'm shitting on people who are claiming that there are examples of election fraud when there clearly aren't. It's gonna be a bit touch and go there, but absolutely wild to watch that happen as quickly as it did. Um, Rusty says USA is now Russia. Oh, you know what? I can pull Facebook up now on my phone and I can actually read what you guys are doing on Facebook here today. That's a nice change of pace. Hold on, let me bring that up here really quickly. Let's see here. Where is my live? There we go. There we go. All right, so I can actually see you guys on Facebook. Once I can actually do this every day, I'm probably going to have to put a disclaimer on there saying that I can actually see what you're saying. Dwayne Chakosky saying total BS. I couldn't agree more. Dennis, hey brethren, Dennis and Kakana. I was just looking for you on TikTok. Were you saying TikTok turned off your live feed? Yeah, I was highlighting an example of voter fraud, genuine voter fraud. The GOP paid $4.3 million to an entity to be able to make it look like dead people were word election fraud. They took it away from me. So now here we are. And I appreciate you being here. And everyone who's watching on Facebook, this isn't going to be consistent for right now. But I can see your comments today. So anybody who wants to comment through Facebook, you do have that option today. You might have it going forward. I got to see if I can get a laptop over the weekend. I think I probably am going to do it after the show wraps up today. And for the record, for those of you that weren't listening at the beginning of the show, I can't give you the details specifically, but there's been some major changes in my life coming my way. All good. It's going to delay the studio by just a couple of days, and I can't wait to be able to give you guys more details. But you're going to have to be dealing with the blinds and the boxes over on the side there and my broken desk for a little bit longer. But oh man, is it going to look great in the long run. But so feel free on Facebook to make comments, and obviously on YouTube, that's always going to work here as well. But let's see here. So we're falling behind. Um, Sharon saying they made a movie out of the White Rose. I was able to get it through the Nina Public Library, but it also is available on Apple TV and Google Play. I don't have either of those, but that's a good suggestion, Sharon. Thank you. I would suggest that the Vice Rosa or the White Rose is it's a very good story, and I think it's very pertinent, especially given what took place in Minneapolis earlier this week. Um, and anybody who's listening on my Facebook Live, please click the share arrow there and get it out on your feeds as well. Let's get this out there so more people can watch it. But you're literally watching them censor me in real time. You're actually watching that happen in real time. Jaramani says, I bet talking about NSPM7 will get you banned on TikTok too, even though that's government policy. I'm not mocking you, Jaramani. I think you're right. That's government policy that is passed. It's not a rumor. It's what's actually happening. And unfortunately, it's something that we're going to have to deal with there. Yeah, Cassandra says mandated doublespeak, not dystopian at all. What's up, Deanne? Thanks for being here. Yeah, I'll tell you about the good news as soon as I can. Don't you worry. It's going to be awesome. Jordan says a lot of people will say contest instead of election. Okay. Okay. I might work on that. I'm going to have a spreadsheet of like the words I can and can't say, and I'm going to have to post them on my page so anybody who watches me knows what I mean when I'm talking. Um, Justin's asking, is YouTube muting me now? Really? Some people can hear me. All right, everybody has to leave and come back. Leave and come back if you can't hear me. Okay. Yeah, I have no idea what happened there. Um, God, this is going to be such a freaking process. All right, hold on. And also, for some reason, putting my phone up against, so the way I have things set up right now is I have my phone kind of pressed up against my iPad. Which you know what? I don't even have to do because I'm not recording through there. So I can just put that on the table. Maybe that'll work. Okay, let's just do it that way. So just leave and come back. Everything will be good on the other side of that. Thank you. I apologize. I was getting on a rant there and then I wasn't seeing that. Um, Okay, good. Good, good, good. We're all good. This is obviously going to be touch and go as we work it out. And for the record, it's going to be a lot fancier in just a moment. So hopefully you guys can all come back here in just a second. But so that was my election fraud story that ended up turning into a censorship story, which is a really fun twist of fate. Yeah, get that red hat life going. I think that might be the move. You know, it turns out that MAGA politics really are the only kind of politics that makes sense. If you want to return to common sense, maybe we should just blah blah. You're probably right. It's all right. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. That's cool. But so I'm gonna pivot now, maybe to something a little bit more content friendly here. The Democratic Party and their short failings. I'm sure the censors will love that. It's funny, all the people that told me that I became inside the box recently, I was no longer outside the box, seemed to think I was very outside the box when my show was criticizing Joe Biden and the Democrats, and then I only really started getting called out and reprimanded for my speech when Donald Trump was in office. Sure is funny how that works, isn't it? Just a Wisco girl said you're navigating this change in procedure fine, Ben. We appreciate you. Well, thank you very much, Wisco girl. Genocide Joe. I called him Genocide Joe all the time, and I feel like I can say that now, because I'm only on YouTube. But exactly. But you call me Orange Man, and all of a sudden you're being unpatriotic. I'll never be able to figure out the logic of MAGA. It's very difficult to crack their nuance. You know what I mean? But so, on to how the Democrats are showing a little bit of the changing of the guard here in a way that I find to be very interesting. By the way, real quick, I have news on to my left here. I don't have a whole story about this, but I just want to highlight something for you guys. And like this used to piss off a lot of the people who were a little bit more diehard lib when I would talk about it. But when it came to the Donald Trump having the confidential files in his Mar-a-Lago bathroom, I'd always say, you guys make a big deal about that, but then when Mike Pence and Joe Biden get caught and they're like, "Oh, our mistake, we'll give them back immediately," and then they give them back. Um, I was like, guys, you realize that means they did what they needed to do and they gave them back. And you guys would always get really mad at me and you would say I was downplaying Trump having the files in the name of making sure that MAGA wanted to keep listening to the show. John Bolton got caught with uh, classified files that he was writing down the notes of in his diary to show to other people, and he pled guilty to that. He's getting, I'm pretty sure, no jail time, and he's paying a $2 million fine. So it turns out that this egregious effort that you thought that Donald Trump was engaging in treason and should be in jail for the rest of his life, it was all politics. That was always my argument about it, is that everything Democrats were doing to Donald Trump was politics. It's not that he wasn't guilty. It's that other people are guilty of it too, and no one gives a shit. When Donald Trump was found guilty of lying about the cost of like lying about his mortgage info, I was like, of course he was. You know who else does that kind of shit? Elon and Jeff Bezos and the rest of the funky bunch. Um, but the government officials are never going to crack down on them. That's why when I would say, are the cases about Donald Trump legitimate or not? Yes and no. Yes, because he's obviously guilty. No, because I can find you hundreds of examples of other people who are just as flagrantly guilty. And the reason Democrats were doing that shit was to make sure that was to try and make it so he couldn't get on the ballot because they knew that they would end up losing to him based on the candidates that they were intending to run. So um that's always been my thoughts on it. And John Bolton has officially just pled guilty and is going to pay $2 million, and we're moving on. So if you want to steal classified documents, write all the important details about them down in your journals, show those journals to other foreign entities, and then get caught doing it. It is legal as long as you have $2 million to be able to pay. And of course, I guarantee you, if I had MSNBC on right now, they'd be talking about how Donald Trump is weaponizing the Defense Department against John Bolton. First of all, fuck John Bolton. Second of all, turns out if you have enough money, it doesn't matter anymore. Um, Funny how that works. Isabel's telling me this is why I need a backup account. This weekend's going to be all about getting that and the rest of the media stuff here off the ground, but you're not wrong, and I have a feeling it's not the only time. Thank you, Chuck. I love you, bud. Thank you for still being here. Tell all your friends. Everybody tell all your friends about how to find me while we're here. Like and subscribe, blah 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 blah. And by the way, all of you that have subscribed on the channel, we've almost doubled in subscribers over the course of 3 days, and it's been absolutely awesome to watch happen. Um, Old Lib says to break one law at a time. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you and I had that conversation in person. I remember that's when I knew you and I would get along. I think I remember specifically why we were talking about that too, which is funny. But okay, so anyway, on to the Democratic Party. Excuse me 1 second. I'm just going to grab my bottle of water that I forgot in the fridge, and I will be right back. There we go. Yeah, you guys try doing this for 2 hours straight at a time, all right? Crickets. What I need to do is have a recording of the pause music from the N64 game GoldenEye and just let that play when I need a second because let's be real, listening to that song on repeat's probably better than the show. Yeah, so Rusty, actually, so this show is going to be on Substack, but it's not going to be on my Substack starting on Monday. I will try and build my Substack out eventually, but I'm just one thing at a time here. I'm honestly, I'm drinking from a fire hose and I just have a lot of information coming from a lot of places right now, and I think I just need to focus on a couple things at a time. But the Minocqua Brewing Company has offered to pay me to if I'd allow them to carry my show. I'm still able to do. I'm still going to be on all these. I'm still independent. I am doing my own thoughts, all that jazz. But Kirk heard what happened, and he offered to help me out financially at least for the next couple of months while I try and get my independent operation off the ground here. So even though that guy and I don't always see eye to eye on things, I think the way he talked about Francesca Hong and a handful of other Democratic candidates for governor was a bit off, a bit out there. And as far as I'm concerned, I appreciate him for doing that. But so I am going to be on that Substack for at least the next month or two. But eventually, I do intend to build my own shit out here, one thing at a time. What do you mean, stop that right meow? It's only the second time I've even made that. Um, yeah, and Nataki, that's my attitude as well. The fact that he's willing to help me out like that just goes to show you. Like, I, I want to keep this as a news program right now, but I will say the way the community has reached out, I had a guy call me and say, I'm going to buy you signage. He says, come together, come up with some branding, send it to me, and I'm going to get it for you. And again, I can't tell you the offer that was made to me this morning yet, but I cannot wait to tell you about it. And it's going to be happy in a lot of ways. Wh- Carla, give me a second analogy then. All right. What's another thing other than a fire hose that is indicative of tons of information coming at you at once? I'm not an organized individual and I have a lot of information in a lot of places right now. Fight me. Anyway, so on to the Democratic Party. And this news broke right around 6 p.m. Some of you guys might have heard it already. I talked about it on my nighttime live a little bit, but this to me is the largest sign of a changing of the guard within the liberal establishment. In my opinion, the reason why we are dealing with Donald Trump in the first place is because of senators like the person that I'm about to talk about. But if you have not heard, at 6 p.m., Michigan's Senator Alyssa Slotkin, ex-CIA officer and Blue MAGA extraordinaire, has made the call that there needs to be a changing of the guard within Democratic leadership. Now, what's interesting about that is people would view her as one of the people. No, she wouldn't. That they would view uh if you asked someone like me, should Alyssa Slotkin still be in the Democratic Party come her next election, I would say no. And what her saying that says to me is that she watched what happened in New York. Because right now, the liberal establishment media is working overtime to try and convince you that what happened in New York is not replicable all over this country. And I am here to tell you that that is not true at all. And were a DSA candidate like Francesca Hong to come out on top of the Democratic primary in a purple state like Wisconsin, Well, the idea that people aren't looking for leftist politics would be gone at that point, right? Because here's the common misconception. People hear the idea of a purple state and they think that means you need to present yourself as centrist. Purple state does not mean centrist. Purple state means that there's a bunch of Republicans and a bunch of Democrats. It means that there's a bunch of people that want to see a mass virgin army pew-pewing people in the middle of the streets. And there's a bunch of people that want to see taxes raised on billionaires between 70 and 91%. It doesn't mean that it is a state of people that doesn't want to do anything about healthcare and hopes that we just overinvest in the police for the rest of our lives. Like, that's how they try and present it. The only way to win in purple states is to present yourself as moderate, as centrist. If Francesca Hong comes out of the Democratic primary, that whole narrative goes out the window. Even as recently as 2022. Now, don't get me wrong, I think he's a piece of shit now, but I was living there. John Fetterman was an absolute leftist. I was so goddamn excited about his candidacy while he was running. I knew him as the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, all right? I followed John Fetterman for a very long time. The way he is acting right now, either someone has dirt on him, he's received millions of dollars as a bribe, or I don't it's like some people make the comments about it, but like it also is true. People that have strokes, it can alter your brain chemistry. That might have happened. I have no idea about. I'm not accusing that part of it, but it definitely could be all three. And as Ali says, who I know isn't from Pittsburgh but was in the state at the time at least, says he was a hippie, dog. And I'm like, exactly. He was so exciting and he won in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a swing state. And so the idea that to win swing states you need to be some kind of hyper moderate is not the verbiage. And yet the DNC, liberal media, and everyone else are trying to convince you that that is the case. So when Alyssa Slotkin comes out and says there needs to be new Democratic leadership, she's in Michigan right now. She is watching Mallory McMorrow and Haley Stevens get absolutely dog walked by Al Said, who is running on Medicare for All and cutting off funding to Israel and all of the things that leftists talk about. I think the most recent polling I saw had Al Said at 43%, Haley Stevens at like 32%, and Mallory McMorrow at like 12% or some shit like that. I don't have it in front of me, but he's absolute. Even if Mallory dropped out and threw her support and every single one of her people went behind Stevens, no guarantee that she'd be able to beat him right now. So, like, she's watching that. She saw what happened in New York. She's watching what happened in Maine. She's watching what happened in the LA's mayor's race. She watched what happened in Seattle. She's going to see what happens in the Wisconsin race. And when it's all said and done, it's going to be like, son of a bitch, we're actually losing this. I'm actually seeing more and more posts on my social media accounts referencing the idea that oh boy, the level-headed Democrats need to get organized, both on the ground and online, because that's what the DSA is doing, and that's how they're gaining so much support. No, they're gaining so much support because the level-headed people in the Democratic Party are the ones trying to convince us that better things can't happen. And there's another part of the flank telling you, oh no, we absolutely can do these things, and we're just choosing not to do that. Nataki says my dad's MAGA girlfriend is losing her mind over the socialism happening in NY. What? What? You mean people are getting childcare and they're not going broke doing it? And like what's funny is, Nataki, I'm not going to assume the age of that woman, but as I always say, and I hope Brian is in the chat right now, the boomers are the welfare generation. They're the people that benefited from high taxes so that all of their services were funded and they were paid the appropriate levels and they could go to college if they wanted to. And even if they didn't, their jobs paid them enough to be able to get by, commensurate to what inflation was at the time. And they're the same people that get pissed as shit the second they realize, what? You're going to provide the exact same services I had to the younger generation? This is fucking bullshit. Not Penny. Hashtag. Well, no, not just not Penny, but I realize Penny's our girl from the Discord chat. And that goes for a lot of people, including Brian, mind you. Brian gets it. Brian and I are on the same side. I just like to jerk him around a little bit because I can't help myself. I reposted the link, by the way, just a couple of posts up. Anybody who wants to punch that link into their web address and has anything to say about what I'm talking about, I welcome any thoughts on the matter. Eventually, that should have a sponsorship. We got to figure out things to sponsor. I should get a whiteboard like when Katie Porter was cool and have it behind me, be like, this is how much fucking CEOs are fucking you over, you know? Like, sorry, it's too many F words. I apologize. Got to keep it together here. It's almost 10 o'clock on a Friday, which, means we're just about done mentally. And then we just kind of go off the rails from there. And I start talking about movies and random references instead of anything politically related. Um, Dems are weaponizing the word electability, Canary. And here's the thing, they've been weaponizing the word electability since at least 2016, probably longer, but that's just how long I've been paying attention to it. It's always been that way. And, like, I'm going to take it there. And I don't know if Cynthia's in the chat or not. I hope she is because I know she'd have my back on this. They specifically weaponize it and they utilize the older black communities around the country to do it. Because the way they have pushed back against progressive politics for the last 10 years that I don't think works anymore is they would say the Bernie Sanders style approach to politics was inherently racist. That anytime you hear somebody say working class politics, that they mean white people in working class positions, when in reality, the reason they could get away with that is because progressives never do identity. MAGA does identity, blue MAGA does identity. Technically, progressives do identity, but it's the 1% versus the 99%. We do not break everybody up into little groups. It is a small percentage of the population versus the rest of us, and the politics of progressive politics circulate around that idea. And so in 2016, Bernie Sanders goes up and says, we have to break up the banks. And Hillary Clinton says, well, how's that going to do anything about racism? Um, Juba says, I will never forgive Jim Clyburn. And Juba, by the way, I don't know if you saw my private message I sent you before on Facebook, but get back to me and let me know what you think there. Um, but exactly, Jim Clyburn does that. He essentially is a shepherd for that community, just like everyone has shepherds. I'm not saying it's specifically them, but I have watched the Democratic Party because 92% of the black population in America votes for Democrats. So they are a very large block of the party because I mean, have you seen the way MAGA talks about them? Like it's not like they really have a second option. But so they scare the people over 50 years old. Because I'll tell you, the black people my age and younger, they aren't falling for it. And there's plenty of other examples of that as well. But that has kind of been their MO recently, even as recently as 2024. Do you know how many times I was called a racist sexist online for saying that Kamala Harris was not my candidate for the Democratic Party and it's ridiculous she was forced on us? And here's my list of reasons why, none of which having to do with the fact that she is a woman or a person of color. That is the Democratic strategy at this point. And the reason I think it no longer is going to work anymore is because, and I see you there, Alex, I'll get you on in a second. The reason why I don't believe it's going to work anymore is because of the aftermath of, I don't know if I can say this on YouTube or not, but I'm just going to try it. And if the stream takes me off, everybody have a good weekend. The aftermath of October 7th. Because a lot of us were called anti-Semitic in the aftermath of what took place. And I even, like, being a kid after 9/11, I remember the excessive jingoism that takes place after an attack like that. The part of your brain that might be able to rationalize it in the immediate aftermath, I get it. We were all like a lot of us were there in the aftermath of it, especially when you're younger and you really all you know is someone flew planes and took the lives of American citizens. You can find yourself funneled into that category. And I believe because we experienced that, we maybe looked, a lot of us looked at October 7th through a different lens. And then as the death and destruction continued piling up, some of you might not remember, but the networks used to say 1,200 dead on October 7th. And then it would be like 600 Palestinians, 1,200, 900 Palestinians, 1,000, 1,300, 1,700, 2,500. And then once it got much higher than that, they stopped sharing the comparison anymore. And that number climbed higher and higher and higher without being covered by the media. So then people like me would show up and be like, guys, I think we might have taken this a bit too far at this point. And it's the most hate I ever received in media. And the number of people calling me anti-Semitic was unreal. And it gets to the point now where I know what's in my heart. You guys who know me know that I have nothing but love in my heart for all populations of people that are not doing harm to other people. And anytime someone levies that attack against me now, it rolls off my back. And something tells me that that is the norm. I think a lot of people had that experience. So when the Democratic establishment comes out and says, you're racist, you're sexist, we're like, yeah, all right. On to the next conversation here. Alex, just a heads up, I'm bringing you up here. So here we go.
Well,
What's going
howdy
on?
doody.
How are you?
I am doing good. I have a couple of things that I wanted to touch on really quickly to try and bring it back to what you were saying
Mm-hmm.
about the differences in generation, specifically pertaining to over-policed communities.
Sure.
A big generational divide that I think a lot of people forget about is the fact that even though our elders in our community may only be 50, 60, 70 years old, they still were living in a time where mass communication was not real and did not exist. So if you lived in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, you weren't hearing about things happening into a big city. We know that this is true because we celebrate a federal holiday about it. There were people who were free for 5 years before they knew that Lincoln had even signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And that's just how it worked when there was no widespread available news, and there was also no incentive for plantation owners to get rid of doing any evil practices. The elders in our community that are somewhat more susceptible to the propagandizing of younger generations is something that we see over and over and over again. And I am a big proponent of the only way you can combat that is by arming yourself with facts.
Yeah.
There are many studies that go on to show the policing being used as a tool of structural violence against those who are under 30, I think is what the study was actually referring to. But it just goes to show that there is a gap here in how people receive and process information, and it's because there aren't many people who get to go and press hard conversations with their grandparents. Like it's hard to do because you're told your entire life that you respect your elders and you don't speak up against your elders. But when grandma's got RFK on the TV and I'm sitting there listening to him talk about how I got autism because my mom got me the vax, like I have to sit there and say, Grandma, this is kind of bullshit, and I don't want you becoming susceptible to the propaganda, even though, I know you are. There are times where it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but public speaking is uncomfortable. Even getting up on here and knowing that I'm going to be talking to you, but in front of other people, that makes me a little nervy,
Sure. You'll get used to it.
Yeah. One other thing that I did want to mention really quick, no matter the subject that you were talking about today, is a case that happened last May. Terriana Thompson was killed in La Crosse by a driver who failed to yield to the right-of-way as she was riding on her bike. She was in the hospital for several days before succumbing to her injuries. Terriana made the president's high list of distinction 2 years in a row for her pursuit of higher education to become a dental tech. At the time of the incident, officers failed to administer any field sobriety tests, and when the driver was taken to the hospital, there were also no additional tests done there either. The DA refused to answer several comments from concerned citizens all over, and even those that reside in the La Crosse area. As a heads up, they are also not fans of dry humor either, should you call them and ask them any questions. I learned that the hard way at 8:04 this morning. Tariana was 27 years young and leaves behind a 1.5-year-old child. Her family has been reaching out to local influencers and those with a platform to spread the word and receive justice for their daughter and accountability for all involved. That was something that mattered a lot to me this morning, and I wanted to spread that as much as I could. So if
I
anybody is
appreciate that.
interested, please reach out to the Thompson family if you have any resources available. I think that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I really can't even add anything to what you said. I'm only hearing about that for my first time right now. We appreciate you for doing that, and you have quite a bit in the Facebook chat, Dennis, to say, and you're crushing it right now. A lot of people on board with what you're saying, and I mean, we all have those kind of people in the family, and you're exactly right. There's some people that facts will resonate with, other people that they're dug into the way that they think. I um I don't know. I say if I could be a billionaire, if I could figure out how to bottle up whatever it was that allowed me to realize. I've worn this on my sleeve. You're very new to the program. I've talked about this 1,000 times. I graduated from college in 2010 in the middle of a recession. My mom passed 3 days after I got my diploma. I couldn't find a job, and life was not trending in the right direction. And I would be sitting there and I would see people talking about racism and things like that. And 22-year-old 2010 Ben would say, "Why are we talking about racism? We have a black president. I think we're done with racism in America." And now I am what I am right now. And I'm not that way because I was bullied. I'm not that way because I just am trying to pander to a community. It's just my life experiences, getting to know people from different populations and things like that kind of allowed me to see life through a different lens as I got older. And when life isn't trending your way, it's very easy to not give a shit about other people's strife and struggles. And if I could find a way to like pull out whatever substance is inside of me that allowed me to rewire my brain and look at life through a completely different lens and bottle it and sell it to young men under the age of 25, I'd probably be a billionaire. And I wish I could figure out how to do it, but I don't know. But what you highlighted there, I think, is exactly right. And it's just exposure, experience, learning new things, talking to new people, and just remaining open minded. And maybe some people that's just not an innate trait, but we press on, I suppose.
Communication is definitely a learned skill, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So
Yeah.
for a lot of people who have become isolated due to living in a rural community or just not being that sociable themselves, maybe they're dealing with something like depression and they're self-isolating to prevent anybody from worrying about them, which becomes very, very common in these rural areas. I do have to disagree a little bit. I don't think that you need to pull anything out from you. It does naturally reside within all of us. Everybody has something that is going to change their mind. And most of the time, when people aren't willing to listen to fact, it has to come down to a personal lived experience. And I know that to be true from a personal standpoint. And as someone who was raised in a literal cult, a doomsday cult, I've seen it happen many, many, many times. It was wild at 9 years old meeting Ron Paul
Yeah.
and helping my mom run for state assembly. And if I remember correctly, she never took any money from any pro-life groups in Wisconsin because she was too libertarian for them. She wasn't conservative enough. And that's where my background comes in. I listened to Alex Jones' radio show 4 days or for 4 hours a day, every single day, and reruns when he wasn't live.
Yeah.
Like, this is not how I am now, is not a product of my upbringing. It is not a product of how my family is. It is simply me stepping outside of my bubble. And I lived in Minneapolis. I lived in the Twin Cities. I lived in LA. I lived in San Jacinto. I have lived so many different lives because there's so much to experience, and shutting yourself off from that experience, it isn't just a political thing. You're just shutting yourself out from the world. Everything else comes naturally when you touch fucking grass, I guess. I don't have an eloquent way to say it, but
Yeah.
it really is what it is. You start unearthing all of these things in your niches and your hobbies. Like for me, I am a amateur horse trainer, and I have been on a horse farm 27 years of my life. And you wouldn't believe how acceptable it is to pick up a 2x4 and smack a horse with it, to the point where it's celebrated.
Yeah.
These cycles of abuse are found everywhere. So if you can relate back to a time where a 32-year-old man felt small because he saw his dad undoing his belt, if you can make that connection to a cycle of violence and how to not repeat it, that's when you start pulling that out from another person. They start looking inward and reflecting on their own experiences and relating it to someone, not necessarily in like an oppression Olympics way, but just a newfound sense of, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who goes through this. And when I was thinking that this was fucked up because it was being done to me, I can recognize that it was fucked up being done to me. And there can be something done about it.
Yeah. Very well said. I love the attitude, and that's a hell of an experience as well. I didn't know that about you. I appreciate you chiming in, and your RFK impression is spot on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you take it easy.
You
I'll
as
talk to
well.
you next
Bye.
week. Yeah, bye. Yeah, I appreciate her sharing that story. Empathetic wisdom, as just a Wisco girl kind of highlights there in the chat. I couldn't agree more. Deanne saying MAGA doesn't care about facts. Do we just give up and quit wasting our time on trying to get through to them? Not all of them. There's obvious ones that are unreachable, and then there's other ones that actually are pissed off. It's probably only about 1 in 5 people that voted for him, but there are people upset with this Trump presidency. One of them is a very good friend of mine who actually offered to contribute to my studio once I kind of get it off the ground. He said, "Did I vote for Trump?" Yeah. He says, "I voted for him to bring prices down." He says, "Remember when I texted you and said, enjoy the ride home to Pittsburgh? Gas is $2.50. He goes, "That's what I voted for." He goes, "I did not vote for a war in Iran. I did not vote for this hate. I voted for economics. And now all we're getting is hate, and I'm in a worse place economically." He goes, "This guy sucks." Like, that's out there. That's a thing that people are thinking. That's a thing that people are saying. And what sucks is there are people that will hear that, specifically Democrats, and they'll be like, "Oh, you just realized it now?" Or like you mock them in some way. And it's going to take a lot of internal control. But you need to hear those kind of things if you're like, "It was so obvious." You need to recognize that the Democratic Party is not offering a viable substitute in the eyes of a lot of people. You can agree or disagree, but that's my perception on things. And but when they're willing to acknowledge the shortcomings of their people, instead of being mocking about it, just embrace what happened. Um, Jim says communication is learned and important, not nearly as important as the other side of that, the listening side. Too many of us are thinking of what we say will say next instead of listening to others. So, Jim, my favorite movie of all time is Fight Club, because every time I watch it, I feel like I get a different message out of it. And there's a line that always resonated with me since I was 15 years old. If you haven't seen it, Edward Norton's character at the beginning of the movie goes to a bunch of different self-help groups for addictions and illnesses that he does not have. He likes going there though because like for some reason going there and crying with the people that are there, it helps him get home and go to bed. And eventually Marla, the main, I'm blanking on her name, Hannah Bodden Carter, shows up at the events, and she's also faking it. And they call each other out on it. And they're like, "So why do you even do this anyway?" And Edward Norton says, "Because I feel like people are actually listening to me instead of," and Marla interrupts him and says, "instead of thinking about what they're going to say next." And I've always appreciated that line. And to be frank, I try my best to institute that in this. I try genuinely listening to people instead of trying to find ways to get you in gotchas. And but so I'm right there with you, dude. I have the exact same attitude towards like listening and just what it means to be, as stupid as it is, an active listener. But anybody who works in sales that's listening to me right now knows that listening is more than half the battle. People, when you're trying to sell them a software application or some kind of product, they tell you what their pain points are. They're telling you what they're looking for. And some sales reps don't hear them say it. And that's why they're like, this is impossible to sell. No, they're telling you what they're pissed off about in their job. All you have to do is actually listen to them and then show them why the thing you're selling is going to get rid of that for them. If you couldn't convince people the cost is worth eliminating problems, delivery service would never exist. I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually had delivery brought to my house. I always go out because I like the social interaction, and I just like being out. I don't like being a shut in, no matter what the situation is. If it's a massive thunderstorm, I'll typically would rather just forgo eating rather than get delivery. I would argue I'm in a very slim minority here, and that most people order delivery all the time. Why? You had a long day. You don't feel like getting back in the car. There's a foot and a half of snow out there. There's all these problems stacking up against you, and you're like, the extra $6 applied to the cost of what I want to buy is worth the the extra convenience of it. It's a matter of listening. That's what it's all about. You can do it in sales, you can do it in media, you can do it in politics, you can do it in your everyday life. People tell you what they're frustrated about. All you have to do is actually listen. Ken says, I always welcome the disillusioned Trumpers to the enlightened way of thinking, and there are more and more of them, thankfully. Exactly. And as MAGA wakes up from this stupor, I've said this since you guys have known me. The only reason Donald Trump exists, or excuse me, that blue, like liberalism, centrist, neoliberal, do nothing Democrats exist, is because what Donald Trump is doing is so much obviously worse by every metric than what was going on under the Biden administration, and inevitably what would have been going on under a Harris administration. Do I believe that we'd be in a war in Iran with Harris? Yes. Do I believe that the costs would still be high under Harris? Yes. Do I believe they'd be as high as they are right now? No, because we wouldn't be doing tariffs. But the reason that liberalism is allowed to exist in the way that it is because what MAGA offers is so much more objectively worse. We have to shift the whole thing over to the point where what's happening now is called out as objectively bad. And then we have to get to the point where liberalism is objectively the worst option. And then that's when we can actually build our communities out in better ways again. That's always been my philosophy. Since you've met me, that has been my philosophy. And I'm so far off the rails at this point, but that's okay. DSL, what are you saying here? Republicans need to come to the liberal side because no, not at all. You're missing what I'm saying here, dude. You know how I think about it. You've heard me say it 1,000 times. This country was built on progressive politics. The Make America Great Again, the Great Again is referencing progressive politics. We have slowly unearthed that as Democrats have very clearly become center right Republicans. And something tells me, DSL, when you say the left, you mean liberals. And I'm here to tell you there is nothing leftist about liberals. That's the whole problem. Yeah, that's the DSL. And by the way, DSL and I were out getting drinks 2 weeks ago. DSL and I are friends. So, like, this is my point. This is my point about everything that we do on this show is that we can have the disagreements about it. Liberalism is bullshit. It's a simple matter that what's that say? Yeah, but the reason liberalism is allowed to exist is because I'm sitting here right now watching how shitty Donald Trump is at being president. And I'm here telling you right now, Gavin Newsom is a jackass and that I would never vote for him. If we continue along the slide that we are on for 2 more years and Gavin Newsom is on the top of the ticket, I don't know. You know what I mean? And like that's how the duopoly is allowed to persist. So people need to wake up to the fact that Reaganomics is bullshit. Immigrants are not your enemies. Trans people are just going to leave you alone and they don't have bad intentions in the freaking bathroom. And then we can have the real conversations with people that actually mean business. We are stuck in a perpetual two-party system that argues the same six topics in perpetuity because there's so much stuff that's so stupid that people that are like, oh my God, well, this is no good, just find themselves obligated to vote for Newsom. I stayed up for almost 2 nights straight after voting for Harris and watching her get her ass whooped as badly as she did, because I realized that I voted for a candidate that was going to be willing to perpetuate a genocide because I was worried about my own future. And not only did I do that, but I did that and watched that candidate get shellacked anyway, and I could have just voted third party or abstained and let the Democratic Party know that this is not the way that I want to go moving forward. And I genuinely was questioning myself, like, as a person for days after that election. And I mean, I was right in my assessment of matters. We got a masked Virgin Army murdering Americans in the streets. We got a war with Iran where we blew up a school with 160 kids in it. Um, we're watching these charter schools pop up where they are actively derogatory towards the LGBT community and other population and special needs kids and other populations of people, and asking for our dollars to be allowed to do it. I was right that right-wing politics were objectively horseshit, but it doesn't change the fact that liberal politics weren't going to put us in a much better position. So we could all be at brunch, exactly. Let's see here. I fell a little behind. Alex says, I think it's more that we need to recognize liberal or just diet conservatives. It's a different path to the same re-education center for profit gains. Liberals play purity politics. That's the beliefs turned conservative. Exactly. And for the record, Ali, conservatives play identity politics. It's just white identity politics. Pete Hegseth is not qualified to be the defense secretary. Um, Lloyd Austin, who was Joe Biden's defense secretary, and I've talked to him about a dozen or so times on the show. He is the first defense secretary ever to go straight from the board of a defense contractor to the head of the Defense Department. He was working at Raytheon, got the job at the top of the Defense Department. I wonder what he's going to do to solve all the defense related problems, and I wonder which companies are going to benefit from it. I will never be able to speculate how that all played out over the course of the last 4 years. Um, but that wasn't his only first. He was also the first black defense secretary, and that's what liberals ran up the flagpole. So here's the two-party system in action. Liberals announced that we just nominated the first black defense secretary in American history. Conservatives say, why are we hiring people because they're black? Why can't we just hire people because they're qualified? As if Lloyd Austin wasn't obviously qualified for the position. The real consternation is that he is a pawn of the Defense Department and was not going to do anything different than any of the however many dozens of white defense contractors or defense secretaries that came before him. And then MAGA takes the reins and puts a defense secretary in that is infinitely less qualified and infinitely more violent into the role. And that is the two-party system in a nice little bubble. If you told me, explain your entire belief system about the Democrats and Republicans in America in one way, there it is for you right there. And that is the problem. Sterling says, I'd rather Newsom than J.D. Vance. People are stupid and will for Newsom because he's charismatic. I'm okay with him versus literally any Republican. Newsom is too moderate. He's more the same. I'm right there with you, by the way. Um, that's absolutely the case. Anna's asking if I ended the live early. Someone tell her what happened, or maybe she can pop in on YouTube. Um, but yeah, and for the record, that's not me endorsing Newsom. And if the election were today, I'd sit out or vote third party. Um, but in 2 years, if shit just keeps getting worse, if we do get to November and the masked Virgin Army is lining up at polling places to make sure that you're checking your papers as you move along there, um, I can see myself trending more to being a Gavin Newsom Democrat. So I'm be like, well, this is not the fucking America I'm going to be a part of going forward. It's just not happening. We need a Constitution First party, Justin says. If I write that novel, I'm making it a big part. Don't know how realistic it is to pull it off. Constitution, great word, rarely used anymore. Ethan says Newsom is Republican light. He loves to pander to the right and punch down to the left. He won't even do a one-time 5% tax on the 200 billionaires in his state in order to fund a healthcare plan. Like, he's not a liberal. He's definitely not a leftist at the very least. And he's not going to win any Republican votes. It's not like doing that is going to work. I can't wait. If Francesca Hong does come out of the Democratic primary and all of the Wisconsin GOP tries to paint her as a socialist, I'm just going to be like, oh, so you mean she's every Democratic candidate ever, according to you, for the last 40 years? So nothing's changed. She's just the exact same insult that you've always used. Yeah, Sterling, I sat out Trump 45. Waka waka. Don't fuck over Bernie Sanders if you want people to come out. Here's the difference, Sterling. The Democratic Party banks on your fear to vote for the shitty candidates. And the fear is founded. Trash president, obvious trash president in Donald Trump. Less trash the first time, obvious trash the second time. May go down as the worst presidency in history based on the pace that we are on right now. The difference between the GOP and the Democratic establishment is the GOP tried both times, 2016 and 24. We are not Trump politics. We want to still be the party of Reagan. We still want to be the party of tax cuts for the rich, Christianity, and we pretend to do all this stuff, but we are also very anti any programs for the poor. And the Trump administration came out there and said, fuck that, America first, sucks to suck, Rosie O'Donnell's a pig, so on and so forth. And both times, after the GOP voters said with one voice, we don't want to be the party looked at as the party of Reagan anymore, the GOP listened. The Democratic Party has been trending left since 2008. Barack Obama was supposed to be the transformative change that I am talking to you guys about right now. It's actually what kneecapped the Democratic Party as much as it did, is he is such a um he was such a milk toast Democrat that a lot of the people that knew the system was broken in '08 were mad. And then when Sanders came out and seemed to reflect that same early 2008 Obama energy, the Democratic Party came out and kneecapped it. And then in 2020, when Bernie Sanders was leading, the Democratic Party came out and kneecapped it, but they still won anyway. Why? Because Joe Biden ran as a progressive. We're going to do transformative healthcare change. We're going to forgive student loan debt. We're going to do all of these things. Instead, he basically did none of it. And when it was obvious that that same leftist fervor was going to take over in 2024, the Democratic Party canceled a primary and put a centrist up top, and nobody showed up because no one wants that in the Democratic Party. MAGA wants MAGA, for better or worse. Be mad about that? Think that it sucks as a platform? Great. Democrats, the majority of them, want transformative change. Elissa effin Slotkin, I don't know why I censored myself, is calling for leadership change in the Democratic Party. And she is a CIA centrist. Obviously, it's to cover her own ass. I'm not saying that I believe that this is a changing of the guard or anything like that. It says that the writing is on the wall. It says that everybody across this nation democratically understands you need to embrace transformative change. No more blowing up schools and children. No more playing nice with billionaires. No more subsidies for mega corporations while everybody else gets rugged individualism. And if you can't buy into that message as a Democrat, then get the fuck out of the way and let the people that mean business actually do the things that need to be done. Because that is what's popular in the Democratic Party. And saying that sitting out is what led to Trump, yeah, you would figure after 2016, Democrats might have learned their fucking lesson, but it looks like they needed to learn it one more time. Or the more likely outcome is there is no lesson to be learned. They would just rather Donald Trump be president than a leftist, because whether or not Kamala Harris or Donald Trump were president, it would by and large be business as usual. The only difference is it's business as usual with a masked Virgin Army or without. I'd rather go without, and I think a lot of people listening to this probably agree with that sentiment. But most of the problems that exist would still exist today if Kamala Harris were president. If they had let a real progressive run, maybe that might not be the case. We're watching Donald Trump recreate America in his image almost overnight with slim majorities in the House and Senate. And Democrats, when they win, tell you, what do you expect us to do? We have slim majorities in the House and Senate. You're going to have to vote for us harder next in the midterms if you really want to see this kind of change. It's time to get real. It's time to run unpacking the court, and not unpacking the court to do some kind of liberal agenda bullshit. Pack the court and pack it with people that want to overturn Citizens United and get money out of politics. And literally, that's the only reason. It's time to run on the transformational change that people are looking for and the obvious things that will win election. Every single person in this chat wants money out of politics. If you ran on a real agenda with actionable steps to do this, people would vote for you. This ain't rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. It's just basic politics. And the Democratic Party banks on your thinking, Sterling. I'm not calling you out, but they bank on it. You know what I did? I did vote in 2016. You know who I voted for? Batman. Fight me. Brian says, can't the DNC see how the wind is blowing? They need a candidate that fights to win. Your New York hypothesis is correct. I think so. Meanwhile, I'm seeing Politico say, or no, it was Tim Dillon. He's a comedian that hosts a very popular podcast, and he was on the Joe Rogan show. He leans like slightly right, but not Trump right. But I guarantee you he voted for Trump. I don't know that for a fact. Thank you, Ken. Um, He said, we need boring. We need a blue governor in a red state, like an Andy Beshear, a Roy Cooper. He said, the show's over. He said, Trump is like a drug. The last 10 years has been like the whole country is on drugs. We need to take a step back from that and just go back to boring politics and do that, as if Joe Biden wasn't boring politics. See how that works? And that's kind of the narrative that all of this media apparatus is going to push for the next 2 years, is that left-wing politics is too radical. It's not, I don't think that's the future at all, but be ready for a media-wide push for that kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that makes you question why a voice would be taken away 6 weeks before a gubernatorial primary when there's a DSA candidate currently running at the top of the ticket. It's the kind of answers we'll never be able to get to the bottom of. That's a hypothetical situation, of course. I don't have a specific example that I'm talking about there. Okay, I'm so far behind. Wait, Sterling, I disagree about 16. For whatever reason, it was the Southern vote, predominantly black vote, that pushed Hillary through. IDK, why they loved her so much, they did. I actually talked about that at the beginning of the podcast. You should go back and check it out later. DSL says, why can't states just clean voter rolls? They know when someone dies just like they know when someone is born. They should do it faster. I'm with you there. But DSL, I don't know if you were listening to the beginning of my podcast, but Utah was caught. That's why they actually took me off of TikTok. They restricted my account because they claimed I was spreading election rumors. This is corroborated. In Utah, they were just found out the Wisconsin GOP was paying a group $4.3 million to make it look like dead people were voting so they could get a gerrymandered district across the finish line. Did you even know that that happened? I know you assume that all the dead people are voting for liberals. We just found the dead people voting for the GOP, and something tells me it's not even on your radar. Something tells me you didn't even know that that happened. And unlike all the bullshit that Donald Trump talks about, the thing that I'm talking about is proven to happen. There are records that show that it happened. So I'm with you. They should be able to get those people off of the records, but no, get out of here with that. Um, Welcome to the party, Mikey. Suburban Bourbon. I love you guys. What was the one yesterday? Fuck muffins. That killed me. And then she changed her name. She's like, I didn't realize I still had the same handle from when I was in junior high, and that killed me even harder. We have more to do than repeal Citizens United. We have to repeal corporate personhood. Absolutely. Do you guys remember when Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, when Stephen Colbert was funny, created that super PAC when Colbert was pretending to run for Senate in Carolina? And they created a commercial where they said, if Mitt Romney believes, and they played a clip of him saying, I believe corporations are people. They say, then Mitt Romney is a serial killer. And they like have all these graphics and they go over the top with it. And then they talk about how he chopped up a bunch of companies as a guy that was involved in a hedge fund and selling them for scraps. Because hedge funds have been doing this for over a decade and a half, and we're only just coming to grips with that like the last 2 or 3 years. Um, and then the Republicans, of course, were like, this is a little untoward, calling him a serial killer. And like, meanwhile, anybody with a basic capacity for common sense understands what they actually meant by that. But you're exactly right. Corporate personhood needs to bounce. Jake F. 41 says, what would have been done if 2016 if there had been ranked choice voting? Exactly. Exactly. Hillary would have came in a distant third, and there probably wouldn't have ever even been a MAGA movement. Valerie or Mallory, I was done with the Democratic Party in 2012. I get that. Clean or Susan says, can't stand Harris. She was crappy as California's attorney general. Her policies disproportionately led to the incarceration and criminalization behind marijuana. She can kick rocks. Susan, she was polling at 0% in the 2020 primary, and then we're trying to pretend like she was a rock star in 2024. There was absolutely no evidence that anybody was looking for her as a candidate the entire time. No, a single shred of evidence. Um, Wisco Girl says they do clean voter rolls. Yeah, but I mean, like the stupid Doge stories get run up with how technologically advanced we are. Like, let's say hypothetically, if you get laid off, like all of your information gets scrubbed off the database almost immediately. And like, you'd have to think the government can find you real fucking quick when you're not paying your taxes. But then you got these rules that have a lot of outdated information on them. I'm not assuming any toward type of untoward nonsense going on there, but it's real. Kristen Ann says on Facebook, makes sense to view this as a drug binge without the fun high. Exactly. Exactly. Wisco Girl says, for Wisconsin, I can attest to that anyway. Bustello Maserati said voted Harris Walls would have been better. Definitely would have been better. Wouldn't have been good, but would have been better, like objectively in by every metric. Um, I have not read Shock Doctrine. Uh, Carla said I loved that bit, but I don't remember which one I was doing now. DSL or is Isabel says everybody needs to vote in primaries. Oh, I guarantee you, if you listen to this show, you vote in primaries. This isn't a show for passing politics. This isn't a show for like, did you hear about the trans or did you hear about the reflecting poll? This is for like systemic bullshit that goes like 4 layers under the underlying problem. Um DSL says Wisconsin is better than the vast majority of the states, especially the people. I've lived in two states, and I can say there's a lot to like about the people of the Fox Valley and Wisconsin in general. I definitely can agree with you on that. But I stated 2 days ago, I think, every state has awesome people. We do this shit all the time. This is a true story. I was going down to Milwaukee to party with some friends of mine that were visiting from another state. And I told a bunch of my friends up here at a local bar, I was like, oh, I'm going down to Milwaukee to party for a while. And they're like, oh, why? Make sure you don't get shot while you're down there. And then I met a bunch of random people while I was partying down in Milwaukee. And I'm like, yeah, I do radio. And like, I was like, oh, actually, I used to live in the city and there's not nearly as much crime as you guys up here think there are. Most of the people in the city are actually just like the people that are here and they're pretty friendly people. Then you go down to the city and I would meet strangers and like, what I do for a living is cool, right? So I'd be like, yeah, I do talk radio up in the Fox Valley. And they'd be like, why do you live in the Fox Valley? And I was like, because it's cool and the people up there are pretty nice. And if you went up there, you'd probably have a really good time and there's some pretty nice scenery. And so, like, I talk to the people up here about city life and they shit talk it. And I talk about the people in the city about less congested life and they shit talk it. And as somebody that's done both, I'm like, oh no, actually, like 95% of the people I meet are very good people. And this stuff that we do is specifically embroiled in us. I'm all for making fun. I'm all for good, lighthearted ribbing. Yeah, totally. And I can knock the city people as well as the rural people. Easy. That's not the point. It's the fact that everybody instinctively thinks the other people are the enemy, and that's by design. People in New York City, yeah, they're probably a bit more rude by per capita, but like you also have to move faster. You know what I can't stand about the Fox cities other than the driving? The fact that you guys are so willing to just have full blown conversations with one another in line, like with the cashier. There's seven people behind you. Stop talking about your goddamn kids and get out of line. Like, I got places to be. Like, but it doesn't make me hate you guys. It doesn't make me think this place sucks. I'm just like, man, if they pulled this into shit in Pittsburgh, people would have some things to say about what's happening right now. Um, which is funny to me. But so that's kind of my attitude on that front. But I keep falling behind. You guys go so fast on these chats. Yeah, Tom says the invisible walls of inherited opinions. Sorry, I'm so far behind on the chat, guys. It's gonna be hard for me to really get everything in here. Mikey says, speaking of primaries and voting, have you heard the Postmaster General Steiners stating in Congress that he will not accept mail-in voting in blue states? I haven't heard that yet. I'm going to have to look into that. I always try to pump the brakes on those kind of things because always remember, and he's not the Postmaster General anymore, but when the 2020 election was happening, Louis DeJoy was the Postmaster General. And he was public enemy number one, if you remember correctly. He was going to steal the elections and rig them for Donald Trump and blah, 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 blah. And then Joe Biden won handily. Of course, that only happened because I went to every state and voted 20 times. But then Joe Biden and the Democrats had a trifecta. And while Joe Biden cannot remove the Postmaster General, you can appoint all the people in the group there, and they can vote to remove him. So if he were such an inherent threat to the post office, Joe Biden and the Democrats had the ability to remove him the second that they were in office. And he lasted his entire tenure. So he was public enemy number one, then Democrats won, then you never heard about it again, and now they're trying to get you worried about voter fraud again. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying I've seen this story before, and I know the way that that kind of stuff goes. So some food for thought there as it goes along. Not saying you're wrong, not saying we shouldn't look into it. I will check it out over the weekend, but I'm saying this is how these kind of stories happen in the ways that they progress. In pretty flagrant ways, in my opinion. So much for talking in line now. I'm saying, if the line is long, if it's just you and maybe one other person, fine. They'll try and talk to me. And like I can feel it in my chest. I'm like, oh my God, there's three people behind me. And based on what I know about the Fox Valley, they probably just don't give a shit. They're just like, yeah, what do I have to do? And I'm just like, that's not how things work where I'm from. There's differences. Not saying it's better, not saying it's worth. I kind of like the friendly vibe up here, but it's just a shock to my system given the way that I lived the bulk of my life. But in any event, what's this here? I recall an interview about the shock doctrine, absolutely mind blowing and not in a good way. I'm gonna have to. People keep bringing that up with me. I have to look into that more. Um, But in any event, so that's my attitude on that. That was my 45-minute rant there. I'm gonna have to get better at this. Once I actually have some of my stuff in line here, notes wise, it'll be easier for me to stay on point. But we'll get there. We're getting there slowly but surely. On a human level, this has been an enjoyable experience this week. Um, Wait, what did Maserati say before? Alex, is there a homogenous group in the USA to counterbalance the current majority? Like here's the thing about that question, Maserati, and this has always been interesting to me. Leftists can tell you what they don't like about liberal Democrats. What about leftist ideology don't Democrats like? Like that's kind of the elephant in the room, right? Because the answer to that is they don't want to tax the rich. They are well off by and large. Liberals are. And they want politics to be nicer. They want decorum, but they don't want the people, the 60% of people that are living paycheck to paycheck, to be mad about that. It's why MAGA exists and it's why leftism exists. And like liberals will never tell you why they won't vote for a leftist. You see people now, when Mamdani won the primary, there were a bunch of liberals all over social media saying, "You told us when Kamala Harris was the official that she had to earn your vote. Well, now Mamdani has to earn our vote." And I'd go underneath them and I'd say, "Okay, great. What needs to be done to earn your vote? What part of his policy are you not a fan of that you would like to see change?" And they'd be like, "Get out of here. You don't even live in the States." I'm like, that doesn't matter. What's the actual part of the policy that you want to see change to earn your vote? Kamala Harris had a list of demands presented to her. These are the ways that we would like to see you comport yourself as the representative of the Democratic Party. And if you do, we will vote for you. And then a bunch of, in my opinion, bad faith Democrats are now pulling the same thing against Graham Plattner, against potentially Francesca Hong, against El Said. Well, he's got to earn our vote. Okay, cool. There was literally an entire movement called the Uncommitted Movement that had a website that said, "This is what we want out of Kamala Harris as a candidate. And if she cannot find a way to compromise with us, then we're not going to vote for her." And then she lost. And now those same Democrats that are seeing progressive candidates see success around the country are trying to pull the same rhetoric, but without any substance. They don't actually have any requests or frustration with why they wouldn't vote for a leftist. So when you talk about a homogenous group in the USA, I'd argue if MAGA could just shut the fuck up about transgender people, there's probably a pretty good chance that that is the homogenized group. I agree with MAGA that rural America was left behind. I agree with MAGA that the government is here to serve corporate interests and the Epstein class and the people that do not give a shit about you. I agree with all of that. Shut up about trans people and Mexicans. Like, that's the homogenized group. And the reason why we don't think that way is because our current political system is designed to keep us fighting about identity politics, To a certain extent, it's why I think Democrats hang rainbow flags on government buildings. Do I think Republicans should just shut up and deal with it? Yes, you're grown ass people. Who cares what flags are hanging? But Democrats also know that regardless of what policy they enact, all Fox News is going to talk about for the next 24 hours, screw that, 24 weeks, is the fact that there is a government or rainbow flag hanging at a government building. It's designed to keep us fighting about the nonsense. Um, okay, let's just start here. Gamer, I know you live in Minneapolis. That's the same idea. Mikey, it really irks me as a mail carrier seeing that so much the executive order doesn't trump our universal service obligation. I will say our postal unions are fighting for mail-in voting. Uh, Ben, did you have any thoughts on Chase Oliver in 2024? I'll be real, I don't remember. That name sounds familiar, but I'd have to look into it. So obviously he didn't leave. I have a pretty good memory, and for me to say I don't remember him, that's probably an indictment on where we're at. They want their niceness. They hate anyone that does not agree with them. Tom says, but we can all be billionaires. Zohran Mamdani is growing on me. Smart cookie. DSL, the carrier union is fighting against their own carriers to get rid of Saturday delivery to have a normal schedule just because it'll cost them union dues. Yeah, the postal union cares about themselves. Yeah. I'll have to look into that. You have to tell me more. I wonder if you and Mikey ever interact. Chase Oliver is a libertarian, so 5 years from being a leftist if he ain't full of horseshit. Yeah, I'll be real, Alex. You brought up Ron Paul. I'm not saying he was perfect, but in terms of voting for right wingers, that's probably the closest I've been in my adult life for president. I really liked some of the things, at least from terms of his foreign policy approach. I know he would have cut social programs and done a lot of the stuff that I don't like from that perspective. I've always described myself as fiscally progressive and socially libertarian because everyone always says I'm a fiscal conservative but a social democrat. I take that and completely turn it on its head. I don't use either of the mainline parties. I'm a fiscal progressive and a social libertarian. That's the way I do things. Um, that's my opinion, at least. He was a wonderful guy to speak to. He was a human being. I believe that's why the GOP establishment basically treated him like Bernie Sanders. He was the Bernie of the right. I remember there's a very famous instance where they did the Iowa straw poll and like Mitt Romney was number one. What was the name of the guy? Oh my God. He was like a hyper Christian. He was a senator from my state, and I'm blanking on his name now. I can't believe I'm not remembering it. But he had like a baby face, and he was like still very just as conservative as the rest of them, but like he really leaned into his faith. I'm blanking on the name. Santorum. Santorum was two, and then Ron Paul was three, and Michelle Bachmann was four. They were like, Romney in 2012. I'm talking about. I believe I might be mixing up the names here, Alex. But so it was Romney and Sanctorum 1, 2, Michelle Bachmann 4, and Ron Paul was 3. And Fox News said, "Here's 1 and 2," and Michelle Bachmann has pulled into fourth place, and it was like fourth behind who? You motherfuckers! Like they wouldn't even say Ron Paul's name. And then you flash forward to 2016 or 2020, and they'd have the 24 candidates for Democrat up on a wall, and the news anchor would walk right in front of Sanders' face and stand right there and block him out while they were talking about all the Democratic candidates. It's subtle shit that you can't ever actually accuse them of what they're doing, but it's very obvious what they're doing. Yeah, the only reason I remember Sanctorum is because Yeah, I'm from PA. What's funny is my parents actually took me to a thing because releasing the JFK files was a big thing still even when I was a kid. And he was hosting it and he goes up there and then I'm in a room filled with like press and all this stuff and it was really cool. It was a really fun experience. And there was like an hour of talking before they even got to the crux of the matter. And they're like, now, finally, on to what was released in these files. And he basically did the equivalent of like, yeah, it was magic. And like you could physically, people literally groaned like adults, like rabble, 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 rabble. Um, Wild. I protested at a Santorum rally back in back when he was running for president, and someone called the cops on me because they didn't like my sign. I love that. Can you put what was on the sign? Uh, Never been able to get past the word Santorum as defined by Dan Savage. I'm going to have to look into that. Justin says, I like how I completely forgot about all of those people. Bachman Santorum. One can hope the Trump name will be forgotten. However, we will have a family dynasty. It ain't going any. Oh, absolutely not. If you win, you don't go anywhere. It's when you're one of the unremarkables that it doesn't really matter. But yeah. And of course, I have a pretty decent memory for this kind of stuff, except for apparently Chase Oliver, who came and went. But yeah. All right. Well, didn't get into a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk about today, but that's all right. I'm gonna have to get better at sticking to the script and then interacting with all you guys doing messages because I realize as this audience grows, this chat is just gonna rattle off like that, and I need to be able to stay focused on my stories while also incorporate. I don't want you to shut up, by the way. I love this, but I just got to pick and choose the right ways to do this. I'm still learning. This is only day 4 of Outside the Box Unfiltered, so we're getting there. Her sign was no abortion, no Viagra. That's not even offensive. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Bachman was a fucking nightmare. You're not wrong. But all right. I think I appreciate that, Alex. I think we're gonna call it a week here. Not to be the sappy guy again, but long week. What was a wild train of thought, Brian? Long week, fun week, sad week, happy week, exciting week. Starting next week, we're still going to have this background a little bit longer. I'm hopeful. I'm actually going to go meet with somebody right after this to talk about some stuff. And I'm hopeful that on Monday I can give you guys a little bit more information about what's going on in my life. Big time news. What I can say is I'm probably going to be staying in Wisconsin for at least a little while longer in a very good way. And I'll have more to say about that hopefully soon. Um, I might have to push back the studio by a couple of days. DSL, I jumped into the Bolton thing. You need to go back and listen. It's hilarious to me. You have to listen to my thoughts on it. But I have good news, and like I have to say for the thousandth time, Allie is a dog mom actually said if I keep thanking her that she's not going to listen anymore. So other than Allie, I can't thank you guys enough. I can't thank you guys enough for this week. This would have been a lot harder if it weren't for the people that support me in very obvious ways, people that support me in not so obvious ways, and the people that are just silent viewers that pop in and out, watch for a little bit, move on, and don't leave comments. If there's one thing that I have learned from this week, it's that there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of you that never reached out to me, never followed on Facebook, never called or texted into the show, but that listened every day and were inspired and impacted by what the program was. And are willing to follow along with where it is that this is going next. And if anything, I think it's only going to grow from here. I have a team of people that are helping me get more acclimated. They're helping me rebrand. They're helping me put things together. If you haven't been on my Facebook page yet, and if you're listening on Facebook, by next week we will be able to interact with you. I got to figure out a way because I feel like I have discouraged Facebook listening this week because I haven't been able to interact with it. I'll take ideas from the Discord chat on that over the weekend, but we're going to work on the branding. We're going to work on the presentation. We're going to have better notes. It's going to be more thought out and more like traditional outside the box, but with a significantly louder and more vocal community. And most importantly, and if I have to say, if I had one regret from the last 4 years about the way I did my show, it's not that I didn't talk about local politics, but that I didn't get involved enough in local politics. And I'm going to start being at town halls. Now I have time. I'm literally just going to generate content and be out and about. I don't have to be at the station going to meetings and doing the stuff that was just wasting my time instead of allowing me to continue to build out in the ways that I needed to do. We're going to um, really dive in here, and it's still going to cover the national scene, and I'm still going to be sharing my thoughts about Iran and whatever, inevitably the war in Taiwan and all the other wars that are going to break out in the name of democracy or nukes or whatever bullshit reason the uniparty is going to give you. And it's going to be stronger than ever. Um, and I'm very excited about that. So, what's July 7th, Alex? I appreciate you, Brian. Um, yeah, and we'll keep it rolling from here. Yeah, think global, act local. Exactly. The show's not changing, but it's going to become much more going to these flock meetings, going out there, getting acclimated. I'm actually going to potentially, we'll see what happens because I got a ton of shit to do, but there's a thing for Francesca Hong later tonight at a place locally. Um, that I think I might, if I, like, I'll be real, I am hitting a wall and it has been an emotionally exhausting week. So I might just lay low tonight and just kind of reflect on the way things are going and kind of work on some of my own stuff right now. But starting next week, we're going to hit it even harder. And I think a lot of you guys that are here right now, uh, you're on board. And if I can't say it enough, I'm more reliant on your voices and your word of mouth more than ever. Anytime you're out and about with people that you like talking politics to, tell them you found this new show. Tell them about me. Tell them about what we're trying to do here because my intention is to take this as far as we can take it, and I have a feeling that a lot of you guys have given me the confidence and inspiration to know that there's a chance that what took place this week is not the end of something, it's the beginning of something entirely different, and in reality, it's something that I think can be a lot bigger than what it was. So, I'm ready to do this, and I appreciate all you guys. So, thank you for being here today. Have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday, 9 to 11, and we'll keep it rolling from there. Stay safe out there. Maybe unconnect from politics a little bit, and we'll be back. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good weekend.